Before we start this podcast episode off, I just want to start off by saying, ain't it so funny how so many women are trying to follow in the footsteps of white women in their ideologies around femininity, right? It's funny because aren't these the same women who were advocating for rights and who are still advocating for rights to be delivered from patriarchy? Yeah, that just says a lot. Like, know that you're a leader. That's the point. So let's go ahead and get into today's episode. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Renaissance Room podcast. In today's episode, I just wanted to kind of touch on something. So this may be another real quick. These episodes are like, I say they be short and they don't be short. But anyway, so I found some really, really beautiful Black art. And you guys know that me learning about African American history has just made me, I'm so in love with my people. I'm so in love with God. I'm so in love with myself. And so, I've been gravitating towards art spaces. I've always been a very creative person. I love graphic design. I love art. I just think that there's something about, it's funny. I talked about this on a TikTok I had a while ago. And I talked about, something that was unique, like that unique gifting that I found in Black people. And, I was just talking about how it's just interesting how we can write a certain melody, right? Or how we can hum a certain or, write a certain poem or whatever. And it's just something about it that is so cohesive. It's so beautiful. And it's truly something that really is to be felt. I really feel like art has a way of speaking to so many different people. And I love it. I really do. I love creative art spaces. So anyway, been tapping into Black art and I was going to actually throw something out here, but you guys may not be in the Cincinnati area. But if you are located in Cincinnati, definitely check out this really, really cool exhibition. It's called Black and Brown Faces. It's at the main museum. It's the Art Museum in Cincinnati, Ohio. It's really cool. It's up in Mount Adams, and it's a phenomenal exhibition. There was actually a Black man who made that all happen. So it's really, really cool just to kind of see Black people progressing. And that's why, for me, not necessarily in relation to this man, because I don't know this person on that level, but I really feel like God is moving. I really do. I feel like, and when I say that, I mean, I don't know this person to testify to their life, but what I'm saying is that as far as representation, as far as, the stigma that's oftentimes held black people back from progressing and doing certain things, I just want you guys to know that it's possible today. God is completely moving. You give your life to Christ and anything is possible. That was actually one of my verses for today. So I thought that was really, really dope. But I wanted to kind of touch on something that I noticed in my own life. And something that I feel like can be a bit of a hindrance, and that's education. Now, we know about education. I value education. I talk to you guys about that. That's what this whole podcast is kind of about. It's education. But one thing I realized is the reason why so many Black kids and Black boys and little girls don't like school. So being in certain training environments where, you're on a new job or you're being taught by a certain instructor. And I don't really think that race is so much of it, though race definitely. It's so funny, y'all. And me even saying that, as much as we try to kind of stray away from race and we don't want to make it about race, so much stuff really is rooted in race. And I think that just has such a level of discomfort in itself because it's just such a hard truth. You know what I mean? It's definitely rooted in race, but one thing I realized is why so many kids struggle in school is because you have certain teachers and professors where they talk in circles. They talk in circles. They talk a lot. There's a lot of fillers. One thing I've learned about being in the corporate spaces and the world of conservatism in regards to academia is they use a lot of words that people don't understand. And it's intentional, right? Harriet Thurman, she was talking about this in her book, Medical Apartheid, just how being in the science journals back when trying to research the medical studies and the things that they were doing to the Black body, how so much of the medical jargon and just so much of the literary jargon in itself was so complicated and nobody understood what they were saying. So one thing I've learned just being in the world of academia, the whole nine, I remember before I got to this point in my life where I feel like I'm well read and I was praying for wisdom and I was really, feeding my mind, I really would stray away from these places. And I felt like I was stupid because I didn't understand what they were saying. And I remember being at work not too long ago, and a white girl told me, I was telling her I was studying journalism at the time. And she said, that's so cool because, you can use a lot of words that people don't understand, and you could just pretty much like talk circles around people. And it just said a lot to me about the psychology of white people and the truth about the intentionality in regards to the world of academia. So, one thing I've learned just from even being in corporate spaces, work environments where you have trainers who come and you may not be understanding something. You may even, as a Black person, you may have even strayed away from certain applications or certain positions that you were well qualified for. Heck, you probably was overqualified and you didn't go for it because you knew that there was going to be this certain like emblem in regards to vocabulary, right? They always going to dress it up and make it like super complicated, and it doesn't have to be. I've been in spaces where I was just simply observing, like, and it could have been like, I want to say a luncheon because I don't think I've ever been to a luncheon, but just being in certain like dining environments and you see people get together and I'm listening as they're commingling, and everything that they're saying is like trying to impress the other person. It's like they're not even really relating. They're just spitting out a bunch of vocabulary words that just sound prestigious, right? Like they just want to sound smart. They just want to sound like they know what they're talking about. But I believe that when we talk about education, especially as it relates to liberation and liberation of my people, it's so important for me to break things down in a very simple way. And this idea was first introduced to me by Eric Thomas, actually, because I was always feeling it, but I hadn't quite articulated it in my own life, but I was aware of it, right? And Eric Thomas basically talked about how he wrote a book for little Black boys. I think it was a coloring book or something he said he was doing. I'm not sure where he's from. He could be from Chicago. Let me know. Is Eric Thomas from Chicago? But he basically was talking about how he was going back to the high schools, and a lot of people were telling him, like, write the book like this. He was meeting with editors who were saying that his vocabulary wasn't intricate enough, right? Like it wasn't complex. It wasn't, and he basically just was saying like, no, it's so important for us to speak in a way that's simple so that we can reach the people we need to reach. Like, I don't need to use all those fancy words to get my point across. And so I just had to come back and say that because, Bell Hooks made another reference. And like I said, y'all know how I feel about the whole 9, but, that doesn't take away from the work because I like her work. And so basically Bell Hooks made a reference where she talked about how, dang, I lost my train of thought. Hold on. Let me come back to it. I gave it a moment and it didn't come back to me. So if it comes back to me, we'll just have another podcast episode. But essentially what I was just saying that's what she was saying. Boom. She was just basically saying how there's a divide, right? You hear conversations about like the educated Negro, right? The house Negro. Where does that stem from? So essentially what happens is there is a Black person who is pulled out of the community. This is so funny, you guys. I don't even know what the movie was called, but someone showed a clip on TikTok. And basically there were these white conservatives that were in a room and they were talking about how they take one Negro out of the community. They said that we have to make sure that this Negro is with us, right? So they send him to the best schools, they give him the best resources. And they said after a while, he will become so morphed into us that he will think he's one of us and he'll turn his back on his people. They said in the clip, y'all, they said if an educated Negro stays in their community, they're going to become a leader. And we don't want that. It was so crazy. And it was just so blatant. So my reference point to that was Bell Hooks talks about how there was a divide within the Black community between those who were educated and those who were not educated, right? Black people had a tendency to kind of look down on other Black people who weren't educated, and they kind of had a way of making them feel small or, just really being very arrogant and like blatant in their approaches when they would talk to them and make them feel small. So there was a divide. And it just said a lot to me, just the premise of like education. And we know that like so much of the institutions and everything have kind of been built on the back of the Rockefellers, and how there's been so much intentionality to pretty much make us dumber. And, that's a conversation for another day. But I just kind of wanted to make this podcast episode so that you guys can feel seen and just know that like everything that I am, if you're listening to me, this is nothing but work ethic. Like I wasn't always this way. I had a podcast in 2017. Girl, it was a mess, and I can't even really say it was a mess because I was just trying. And, I've read a lot of books. I'm not super versed, there's still more for me to learn. There's so much to learn, right? Because we got to realize that we're starting at ground zero as African Americans, right? We have not had the ability to learn about ourselves. We don't have an understanding of anything, right? And another reference point I wanted to touch on too is just how, God talks about being created in his image. So imagery is important and it matters, especially in today's times. Representation, it matters. And so my point in that, like me saying that, is it's important for you guys to pick up Song of Solomon. Read that as an African American person, because I think that so many people, especially my brothers, they stray away from the faith because they don't see God in their image. And we talked about how so much of Christianity was rooted in white supremacy. And that's why, we have a lot of people in our community who not really back in this space of faith, right? Because they started creating images of a white Jesus, right? And it's just kind of crazy. I think at this point, from a historical standpoint, we got to understand that Jesus was Black. Christianity did originate in Africa. And it wasn't until they saw the Holy Family, the Holy Trinity family, which is like Black people, Black images of a Black God, right, which was Jesus, that white people began to colonize and to change that. And you can even let me just say this. So the Pope essentially wrote, basically was saying, like, we need a picture of the Holy Family. And I don't know who did the painting, but basically they said there is no European Holy Family. So they had to come up with any type of image. And that's how you have the image of the white Jesus. But yeah, God's Black, like Christianity. And, that is a real thing. And that's why I say that Christianity, you got to realize that there are some origins that's rooted in white supremacy that make us feel like we're bad. So when you see a brother who's tatted, or you see a brother who's doing his thing in his unique way and the way he dressed or whatever, that's why I was telling y'all in that last episode about, don't be so fixated on the outward man, like be fixated on the inward man, like pray for discernment, because you got to realize a lot of Christianity was rooted in white supremacy. And I think that's why a lot of our brothers don't really want to come to the faith. They don't want to, lean into that, because they don't realize that it is in their image, right? They don't, they think that it's a white Jesus. So they're like, we're not trying to hear about that. But you got to realize that we've been lied to. And, that's why I say to this day, you hear a lot of white Christians, but they don't talk about racism. And, what they'd be serving Jesus if they knew he was Black, and this is just the truth. Like, it's not really a matter of race. This is literally what happened. Like, they literally took the images and they recreated the images in their own image, right? From a historical standpoint, we can look and see the culture of Europeanism. Like, it wasn't rooted in any type of spirituality. I mean, you can even take it and look back from the 60s and the 80s, and you'll always see Black people in the church, right? Africans, the same thing. Like, we always had a church. We always were in worship and prayer. That's why when you look at old movies, it's church, right? It's spirit filled. It's Christianity. Like, there's always going to be certain emblems of that. So don't let education trip you up into thinking that, oh, it's only rooted in our communities. No, that's just who we are. Like, our ancestors, right? People talk about the ancestors, right? From a generational standpoint, they've always been Christians. We've always followed that path. We've always been loving, because guess what, baby? We never had nothing else. They took everything that we've ever had. So the only thing we ever had was our faith. The only thing we ever had to stand on was community and love for one another. So let that sink in. I know this podcast was insightful because I just felt the spirit on me off of that. When I get real passionate when I talk about Christ, especially how it relates to Black people, because I need my people to wake up and be freed, okay? Break them shackles. It's time to walk into your destiny. Peace.